I faked bankruptcy and begged my children for shelter. My wealthy daughter slammed the door in my face. My successful surgeon son handed me $100 and told me to leave. Only my youngest, a teacher earning $42,000 a year, opened his door wide, ready to sell his wedding rings to feed me. The next morning, my attorney arrived with $72 million in documentation. The look on their faces, priceless. Welcome back, friends. If you're new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you never miss a story. We'd love to hear from you. Drop your location in the comments below. Just a heads up, while this story is crafted with some creative elements for drama and impact, any resemblance to real individuals or locations is purely by chance. The lesson at the heart of it, though, absolutely genuine. The slam of the door echoed down the quiet street of Madison Park like a judge's gavel sealing a verdict. Final, unforgiving, absolute. I stood on the stone pathway I'd paid to have laid 7 years ago, staring at the mahogany door that had just closed in my face. Rain dripped from my unwashed hair, cold Seattle rain that November delivers without mercy. My clothes, a torn jacket from Goodwill jeans, stained with 3 days of street living, clung to my skin. I could smell myself. Stale sweat. Wet cardboard. Desperation. Behind that door was warmth. Behind that door was my daughter Victoria. The house rose before me like something from a magazine spread. 3 stories of cream-colored stone and floor-to-ceiling windows glowing with golden light. A white Mercedes sat in the circular driveway, worth more than most people earn in 2 years. I'd written the check for the down payment, $240,000. A wedding gift, because that's what fathers do. They provide. They make sure their children never know hunger or want. But standing here now, rainwashing 3 days of grime into my eyes, I understood with brutal clarity. Victoria hadn't seen her father. She'd seen a problem, an embarrassment, a threat to the perfect life I'd bought for her. I'd glimpsed her through the glass before she opened the door. Salmon-colored athletic wear. Hair pulled back in a ponytail, so perfect it must have taken 20 minutes. Diamond studs catching the light, $7,500, last birthday's gift. They sparkled beautifully as she told me she couldn't let me inside. Philip had an important dinner, partners from the firm. It wouldn't look right. I wouldn't look right. She hadn't asked my name, hadn't looked closely enough to recognize the eyes she'd inherited from me. She'd simply assessed the situation with cold calculation, measuring worth in dollars and appearances, and found me lacking. The door closed while I was still speaking, not slammed in anger, but shut with that firm, decisive click that speaks of boundaries being set. Of a daughter choosing her country club neighbors over the man who'd sacrificed everything to give her this life. I stood watching the golden light behind those windows. Shadows moved inside. Life continued warm, safe, comfortable life that I'd built and believed could buy what mattered. The rain came down harder. I couldn't move yet, because turning away meant accepting what I'd just learned about my own child. I pulled my torn collar closer and started walking. My feet screamed with each step, blisters from 2 days walking Seattle's hills. But pain keeps you focused. Pain reminds you you're still alive, still testing, still searching for truth. I had 2 more addresses in my pocket, 2 more children. Alexander, my brilliant surgeon son, who'd learned to value reputation above all else. And Andrew, my youngest, the one I'd called a disappointment when he chose teaching. 1 door had closed. 2 more addresses remained. 2 more chances to discover who my children really were when the man at their door had nothing to offer but need. 2 more chances to learn if I'd raised human beings capable of love. The rain kept falling as I limped down Madison Park's pristine sidewalk, leaving wet footprints that would dry and disappear as if I'd never been there at all. Let me take you back 3 weeks to the moment everything changed. It was a Thursday evening in mid-November. I sat in my corner office on the 35th floor of Smith Tower, watching Seattle's skyline fade to black. Spread across my desk were financial statements, not company books, but personal. A decade of transfers, gifts, bailouts to my children. Victoria, 6 figures last year alone. Alexander, medical school, paid townhouse down payment, covered endless investments. And Andrew. A line so thin it barely registered. State school tuition, a small wedding gift. Nothing since because he'd never asked. My phone had rung 3 times that afternoon. 2:15. Victoria's voice bright and cheerful, the way it always sounded when she wanted something. Daddy, I need about $125,000 for the kitchen. Philip's partners come for dinner, and honestly, it's embarrassing. 4:30. Alexander clipped and professional even with family. Dad, quick question. Investment opportunity in medical tech. I need 90,000. Can you wire it by Friday? No hello, no how are you, just the ask. 6:45. Hey Dad, it's Andrew. Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. School's crazy. I've got this kid Marcus. His mom's working 3 jobs and he's still going hungry. But anyway, just wanted to hear your voice. That's when it hit me, like a hammer to the chest. 2 children who called me Wallet, 1 who called me Dad. I closed my eyes and saw Margaret, my wife, 12 years gone. Her final words in that hospital room, take care of our children, Thomas. Give them everything. I'd built a $72 million empire trying to honor that promise. But sitting there, I understood something terrible. I'd given them everything except what mattered. Another memory surfaced. Andrew at 18 in this very office. I want to be a teacher, Dad. Elementary school. I want to make a difference, not make millions. I'd been furious. I didn't build this empire for my son to make 40,000 a year. He'd looked at me with Margaret's eyes. Then maybe you built it for the wrong reasons. Thus, we hadn't spoken for 3 months after that. I opened my eyes and picked up my phone. I dialed James Peterson, my attorney for 25 years, and maybe the only real friend I had left. James, I need your help with something unusual. How unusual? I want to disappear. Silence. Then carefully, explain. I told him about the 3 calls, about the numbers on my desk, about the test I needed to run before making final decisions about my will, whether the children I'd raised deserved the legacy I'd built. James tried to talk me out of it. Too dangerous, too old. There were other ways, but I'd already decided. I would disappear, shed every marker of wealth, become nothing, a man with nothing to offer but need. And I would knock on their doors to see who would open them, to see if I'd raised children who understood that love isn't measured in wire transfers, or if I'd created something else, something I was afraid to name. The city lights glittered below me, each one representing someone going home to family. I was about to find out if I still had one. I didn't recognize the man staring back at me in the thrift store mirror. 3 days had passed since that conversation with James. 3 days of peeling away everything I'd built over 63 years. The torn jeans and stained jacket cost $15 at Goodwill. I'd stopped shaving, stopped showering, rubbed dirt into my hands until they looked like they belonged to someone who worked with them instead of signing papers. The transformation was complete. I looked exactly like what I needed to be. Nobody. Monday night, the first night I learned what invisible felt like. I walked through Pike Place Market as vendors closed down. People who would have nodded respectfully to Thomas Bennett now stepped around me like something unpleasant on the sidewalk. A woman pulled her daughter closer. A businessman checked his wallet. No one met my eyes. I found shelter under the viaduct that night, wedged between concrete pillars that smelled of rain and decades of desperation. Above me, cars rushed past their headlights, creating moving shadows. Each one carried someone going home, going somewhere warm, going somewhere they belonged. The cold seeped into my bones. I didn't sleep. Tuesday, the second night, I met Helen. She was at the downtown bus station, her belongings in a shopping cart, late 60s gray hair in a thin ponytail, eyes that had seen too much. When she saw me settling onto a nearby bench, she reached into her cart and pulled out half a piece of bread. Stale. Hard. Here, she said. You look hungry. I was. The generosity of that gesture, a woman with nothing sharing what little she had, hit me harder than the cold. Thank you. We sat in silence, watching buses take people to places that weren't concrete benches and shopping carts. Been out here long? She asked. 3 days. 6 years for me, she said quietly. My children forgot about me, called it tough love. She looked at me with eyes holding no anger, just tired sadness. Money changes people, makes them forget what matters. Those words echoed long after she'd settled into sleep on her bench. A memory surfaced sharp and painful. Andrew at 5 years old holding my hand downtown. He'd pointed at a man sleeping in a doorway. Daddy, why is that man sleeping on the street? I'd barely glanced. Because he didn't work hard enough, son. That's what happens when you don't make something of yourself. Andrew had been quiet the rest of that walk. Now sitting on that bus station bench with 3 days of grime on my skin and borrowed bread in my stomach, I understood the cruelty of that answer, the arrogance of it. The man in that doorway might have been a veteran, might have lost everything to medical issues, might have had children who'd forgotten him, might have been someone exactly like Helen, might have been who I'd become if my test revealed what I was beginning to suspect about my own children. By Wednesday evening, I was ready. My body ached, hunger gnawed constantly. But I'd learned what I needed to learn. I'd felt what I needed to feel. I had 3 addresses memorized, 3 children waiting in houses I'd paid for, 3 chances to discover who they really were when the man at their door had nothing but need, 3 chances to learn if Helen's words were true for my own family. If money had changed them too much to remember what mattered, Alexander's glass and steel townhouse stood like a monument to everything I'd taught him to value. It was just past 9 when I reached Capitol Hill. The walk from Madison Park had taken nearly 2 hours each step, grinding blisters deeper. But I'd made it to the second address. The building rose 3 stories of floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed steel beams, all sharp angles and modern lines. Success. Distance from need. I climbed the concrete steps and pressed the bell. The door opened quickly. Alexander stood there in surgical scrubs, phone in hand, probably expecting a delivery. His eyes swept over me with that quick assessing gaze of someone trained to diagnose problems. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe. Recognition trying to surface. Then his expression settled into professional neutrality. "Can I help you?" "Alexander, it's me. It's Dad." I watched him process this. Watched his eyes move from my face to my torn clothes. Watched him take 1 step backward, not quite closing the door, but not opening it wider. "Dad." He tested the word. "What happened?" "I lost everything. The company went under. I've been on the streets for 3 days. I just need a place to stay." He didn't move, didn't invite me in. Just stood there blocking the entrance. "This is very sudden. Why didn't you call?" "I tried. You said you were busy." Something tightened around his mouth. "I'm always busy. I'm a cardiovascular surgeon. But this affects my practice. My patients are important people. Politicians, business executives. If they knew my father was..." He didn't finish, didn't need to. "Living on the streets. It's not about judgment, it's about optics. You know how reputation works." He pulled out his wallet. Italian leather, butter soft, close to $1,000. I'd given it to him 2 years ago. He opened it and pulled out 2 $50 bills. "Here, go find a cheap hotel. Get cleaned up. When you're presentable, we can talk. But I have surgery at 6 tomorrow morning." I didn't take the money right away. Just looked at my son, who'd spent 12 years learning how to heal hearts. "I saw you yesterday, outside your hospital, around 5:30. He went very still. "I see a lot of people outside the hospital. I was sitting on the bench by the main entrance. You walked right past me." "I don't remember. I see dozens of people every day." But his hand tightened on the doorframe. He knew, and he'd chosen to keep walking. "Take the money, please. I want to help, but not like this." I took the $100, watched him close the door before I'd turned away, heard the deadbolt slide home. The healer had just diagnosed his own father as a liability, as something needing to be managed, hidden, made presentable before being acknowledged. I stood on his concrete porch, those 2 $50 bills, feeling like 30 pieces of silver. Whatever sickness had infected Victoria had infected Alexander too. Measuring worth in appearances and bank balances. My feet hurt, my body ached, but nothing hurt worse than the certainty settling in my chest. I had 1 son left, Andrew the teacher. The one who'd chosen purpose over profit, the one who made $42,000 a year helping kids learn to read. 1 more door. 1 more chance to discover if I'd managed to raise even 1 child who remembered that people mattered more than reputations. The small house on South Cloverdale Street looked nothing like my other children's homes. It was nearly 11 when I found the address in Rainier Valley, a working-class neighborhood, where houses sat close together and streetlights threw shadows across cracked sidewalks. The walk from Capitol Hill had taken another hour, my body moving on autopilot, despite every muscle screaming for rest. Andrew's house was a single-story cottage with cream-colored paint peeling in patches. A small garden stretched along the front, clearly tended by hand. No electronic gate, no circular driveway. Just a wooden fence needing repair and a porch light that flickered as I climbed the 3 steps. This was my last chance, my last child. I pressed the doorbell and heard it chime inside. Footsteps approached. The door opened. A woman stood there. Andrew's wife, Claire. I'd met her a handful of times at family gatherings where Victoria and Alexander had made her feel small. She wore a simple olive green sweater and jeans brown hair and a ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry except a thin silver wedding band. Her brown eyes met mine for a heartbeat longer than expected. Then she smiled. "My God," she said immediately, reaching out to take my arm. "What happened to you? Come inside." She pulled me into warmth. The house smelled of something cooking, of life being lived. A small living room with a worn brown sofa and bookshelves made of cinder blocks and planks. "Andrew," Claire called. "Andrew, come quick." Andrew appeared from the kitchen in a gray shirt and old jeans. When he saw me, his face went through a dozen emotions in one heartbeat. "Dad." He crossed the room in 3 strides. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" His hands were on my shoulders, checking me over. What happened? The immediate concern for my well-being rather than reputation or schedule, it was so different from Victoria and Alexander that something cracked in my chest. "I lost everything," I said. "The company, the house. I've been on the streets." Andrew didn't step back, didn't ask how or why. He just pulled me into a hug. "You're here now," he said. "You're safe. That's what matters." Claire was already moving. "The shower. I'll get towels. Andrew, find something clean." "I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. You're family." 20 minutes later, I stood in their tiny bathroom under hot water, watching 3 days of grime swirl down the drain. Clean towels waited. On the toilet lid sat folded clothes, Claire's gray sweatpants, and the oversized olive sweater she'd been wearing. Their own clothes given without hesitation. When I emerged, dinner waited at their small table. Vegetable soup in a chipped bowl, toast with butter, orange juice. Nothing fancy but prepared with care. They sat with me while I ate. Made conversation about Andrew's students, about Claire's garden. Normal things, as if having someone at their table who'd been sleeping under bridges was natural. "You'll take the bedroom," Andrew said when I'd finished. "Claire and I will be fine on the sofa." "No, I can't take your bed." "Dad." His voice was gentle but firm. "You're taking the bed." "We're not discussing this." Claire led me to their bedroom. Small, barely big enough for the double bed, and an old dresser. The sheets were worn soft from many washings. A wedding photo sat on the nightstand, both smiling with pure happiness in borrowed suit and simple dress. "Sleep well," Claire said, touching my arm. "You're safe here." They left, closing the door. I lay in their bed in sheets that smelled of lavender detergent and felt tears sliding down my face. They hadn't asked what happened, hadn't asked how I'd gotten here or why I hadn't called. They'd just taken care of me. 2 children with everything had given me nothing. 1 child with almost nothing had given me everything. I should have slept. My body was exhausted. But through those paper-thin walls, I heard voices from the living room. Andrew and Claire talking quietly. And what I heard next would break something in me that had been holding together for 63 years. I couldn't sleep. The bed was warm, the sheets clean, but through those thin walls, I heard their voices. Andrew and Claire were in the living room. The lamplight spilled under the door, casting a soft glow. I should have covered my ears. I should have let them have their privacy. But I lay there frozen, and I listened. "We don't have enough," Andrew said. His voice was quiet, tired. "My salary barely covers rent and groceries. I don't know how we're going to make it through the month." "I've been thinking about that," Claire said. There was a pause. "We could sell the rings." "No." Andrew's response was immediate. "Claire, those rings mean everything to you." "They're just metal," she said softly. "My grandmother gave them to me when she was dying. She said, 'These rings survived the Great Depression. They'll protect you.' But Andrew, they're not magic. They're just symbols. They're all you have left of her. I have her love. I have her memory. And I have you." Claire's voice broke a little. "Your father is sleeping in our bed right now because he has nowhere else to go. The pawn shop said they'd give us $280 for the set. That's enough to buy groceries for the month and help him get back on his feet." There was a long silence. I pressed my fist against my mouth, trying not to make a sound. "Are you sure?" Andrew asked. "I'm sure." Claire was crying now. I could hear it in her voice. "My grandmother would understand. She always said family comes first. She'd want me to do this." "I love you," Andrew whispered. "I love you too. And we'll get through this. We always do." I heard the scrape of chairs, the sound of them standing, moving toward their bedroom. The lamplight under the door went dark. I lay there in the blackness, my face wet, my chest heaving. For 63 years, I'd believed that money was how you showed love. That providing was the same as caring. That success meant giving your children everything they wanted. But the woman my family had despised for years, the woman Victoria had mocked for her thrift store clothes and Andrew's modest salary, was willing to sacrifice the one precious thing she owned. Not for herself, not for her husband, for me, a stranger who'd shown up on her doorstep in rags. Victoria had closed the door in my face to protect her reputation. Alexander had handed me $100 to make me go away. But Claire was ready to sell her grandmother's rings that had survived the Great Depression rings that meant everything to help me. I didn't deserve it. I didn't deserve any of it. Something shifted inside me that night, something I couldn't name yet. But as I lay there in the darkness listening to the ticking of the clock on the wall, I knew one thing for certain. I'd been wrong about everything. I woke to the smell of cheap coffee and toast, the best breakfast I'd had in years. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains. Claire was in the kitchen humming softly as she poured coffee into mismatched mugs. The table was set with toast, scrambled eggs, and orange juice. Andrew left for school at 6:30, she said, sliding a plate toward me. He teaches first period, but he'll be back around 9:30 during his planning period. I sat down, feeling the weight of the night pressing on my chest. Claire, about those rings. We're not selling them, she said quietly. I thought about it all night. We'll figure something else out. I looked at her. This woman, my family had dismissed this woman who'd been willing to sacrifice everything for a stranger. Why did you let me in? She smiled. Because you needed help. That's enough, isn't it? We ate in comfortable silence. Then she told me about Marcus, an 8-year-old boy in Andrew's class, whose father had passed away the year before. His mother worked 3 jobs. Andrew used his own money, $180 a month, to make sure Marcus had lunch every day. He never told me that, I said. He wouldn't. That's who he is. Claire refilled my coffee, then sat down across from me. Her brown eyes studied my face for a long moment. Mr. Bennett, something doesn't add up. A man like you with your experience, how does someone lose everything that fast? I felt my throat tighten. You don't have to answer, she said gently. But I want you to know, even if this is some kind of test, we would still have opened that door. The words hit me like a physical blow. She knew. Or at least she suspected. And she'd opened the door anyway. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The confession came spilling out the fake bankruptcy, the $72 million sitting untouched in accounts, the test I'd designed to see who my children really were. I told her about Victoria's slammed door, Alexander's $100 dismissal, the 3 days I'd spent invisible on the streets. When I finished, Claire reached across the table and took my hand. You needed to know the truth, she said. I understand that. At 9:30, I heard the front door open. Andrew came in still wearing his jacket, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked at Claire, then at me, and I saw in his eyes that he'd heard enough. Dad, he said quietly, are you okay? I shook my head. I don't know if I am. He sat down beside Claire. What happens now? I was going to confront Victoria and Alexander today, I said. I was going to disinherit them, cut them out completely. Don't. Claire's voice was firm. Don't make permanent decisions out of temporary pain. Give them a chance to change. People can surprise you. Andrew nodded. They're still your children, Dad. They made mistakes. But so did we all. I looked at these 2 people, this teacher and his wife, living in a rented house in Rainier Valley, scraping by on $42,000 a year, and I realized they had more wisdom than I'd accumulated in 63 years of building empires. I pulled out my phone and called James Peterson. A change of plans, I said. Bring everything, the security team, the documentation, the whole setup. But leave the will paperwork in the office. I'm not making any final decisions today. James tried to argue, but I cut him off. Just do it. We're meeting at Andrew's house at 10:30. And call Victoria and Alexander. Tell them their father needs to see them immediately. Though when I hung up, I looked at Andrew and Claire. At 9:30, James Peterson will arrive with his team. And Victoria and Alexander will have to face the truth they've been running from. The neighbors came out onto their porches when 2 black SUVs pulled up to the curb. James Peterson arrived at 9:30 with Derek and 4 security personnel, Tony, Frank, Vincent, and Leonard. They carried briefcases and folders, transforming Andrew's modest living room into something resembling a corporate board meeting. At 10:30, a silver Mercedes and a black BMW arrived. Victoria stepped out in a cream cashmere coat and dark sunglasses. Alexander followed in surgical scrubs, exhausted from a night shift. When they entered and saw me still wearing Andrew's borrowed clothes sitting beside Claire, Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "Dad, sit down," I said. "Both of you." They sat on the worn sofa. James stood behind me, opening his briefcase. "Mr. Bennett is not bankrupt," James said calmly. "His net worth remains approximately $72 million. All accounts are intact. There was no financial collapse." Victoria went white. "What? A test," I said, "to see who you really were when I had nothing to give you. That's not fair." "Fair," I cut her off. James showed them the first document. James laid a phone record on the coffee table. Saturday, November 30th, 2:47 p.m. A 23-minute call from First National Bank to Victoria Bennett. Victoria stared at the paper. "Only there is no First National Bank," James continued. "I arranged that call. An actor reading a script." "That's entrapment," Victoria's voice cracked. "No," I said. "That's information. What you did with it revealed who you are. You didn't call me Victoria. You didn't ask if I was okay. You called your lawyer to check on my will." Silence. Victoria began to cry, deep shaking sobs. I turned to Alexander. "Monday, December 2nd, 5:30 p.m. Outside Swedish Medical Center." His jaw tightened. "You walked out after your shift. I was sitting on the sidewalk. Our eyes met for 3, maybe 4 seconds. Dad, then you crossed the street. You chose not to look closer. Did you really not recognize your own father? Or did you choose not to because stopping would have been a distraction?" Alexander's composure cracked. "I see dozens of people outside that hospital." "You see them," I said, "but you don't know them. You measure worth by appearances, just like I taught you." Andrew stood up from the corner. "And Dad, they learned this from you. You've always measured us by numbers, how much we earned, how successful we looked. You taught them that money equals love, that success means more than kindness. They didn't invent that lesson. They learned it from watching you." The words hit me harder than anything Victoria or Alexander could have said. He was right. Victoria was still crying. Alexander sat frozen, staring at his hands. I looked at them, these two people I'd raised, and I saw myself reflected back. The same cold ambition. The same obsession with appearances. The same belief that wealth could substitute for love. I had built them in my image, and now I was judging them for becoming exactly what I'd taught them to be. The silence stretched out thick and heavy. Then I turned to Claire. Her brown eyes met mine with that same quiet strength I'd seen the night she opened her door. "You knew, didn't you?" If you're still watching at this intense moment, drop a comment below to let me know you're here. What do you think Thomas should do next, before we move to the final chapter? A quick note, while the core message of this story is deeply true, some narrative elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. But what Claire is about to reveal, that's the most honest truth of all. The conclusion is coming, don't miss it. Claire looked into my eyes, calm and steady. "Yes, I knew." Andrew turned to her, stunned. "You knew it was my dad." "I knew the moment I opened the door." "Your eyes never change, Mr. Bennett. You can change your clothes, your hair, your voice, but not your eyes." She looked at Andrew. "But I wanted your father to see something. I wanted him to see that you would give up our bed, our food, even our wedding rings, for a complete stranger. Not because it was your father, because that's who you are. Your father wanted to know who loved him, but I wanted him to know who his son really was." The words broke something inside me. "And I failed," I said, my voice cracking. "I failed to see it all these years." Victoria was still crying, but now her tears were different, raw, honest. "I've spent my whole life trying to be perfect in your eyes, Dad, but it was never enough." Alexander's voice was quiet. "You measured us by money and success. We just learned what you taught us." "I know," I said. "I built you this way. This is my fault too." I took a breath. "Here's what's going to happen. Victoria, Alexander, you're not cut out of the will. But there are conditions. Weekly family therapy for 3 years. Community service with the homeless. Real apologies to Andrew and Claire. And time together. Real time, not transactions. If you fail, then you're out. But I'm giving you a chance." They signed the documents James prepared, shaken but willing. I turned to Andrew and Claire. "I'm giving you a house. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths in Rainier Valley. $420,000 paid in full. It's yours." Andrew started to protest. I raised my hand. "This isn't a gift. It's recognition. You showed me what family really means." 1 week later, I spent 3 days searching for Helen, the woman who'd shared her stale bread with me. I found her at a downtown shelter. I arranged an apartment, a cleaning job in one of my buildings, and a $2,000 monthly stipend. She cried when I told her. Why? Because you shared your bread when you had nothing left to share. 3 months later, March 2025, I stood outside a food bank in Capitol Hill. Victoria was inside volunteering for the first time. Through the window, I watched her kneel beside a homeless woman, listening with genuine attention. It was a small sign, but it was something. Change takes time. Forgiveness takes longer. But, for the first time in 63 years, I understood what real wealth looked like. That evening, I sat with Andrew and Claire on their old sofa in the house I'd given them. The walls still needed paint, the floors still creaked, but it was full of warmth, the kind you can't buy. Money buys a lot of things, I said quietly. Houses, cars, expensive educations. But it doesn't buy the doors that open when you need them most. It doesn't buy the hands that catch you when you fall. It doesn't buy the love that welcomes you without a single question. Andrew smiled. Claire took my hand. Those things come from the heart, I continued. And I've learned at 63 that a heart willing to give everything is worth more than $72 million. Outside, the Seattle rain began to fall soft and steady. But inside, surrounded by the people who'd shown me what family really meant, I finally felt warm. The road ahead was uncertain. But for the first time in decades, I wasn't walking it alone. I'm Thomas Bennett, and I spent 63 years building an empire while losing my family. Don't be like me. Don't measure love in dollars or judge hearts by bank accounts. God gave me 3 children, but I nearly destroyed 2 of them by teaching them that success meant more than compassion. God brought me to my knees on those cold streets before I finally understood. And God used the humblest among my children, a teacher and his wise wife, to show me what real wealth looks like. These grandpa stories aren't just mine. They're family stories that echo in homes everywhere. Stories of parents who provide everything except presents, who build legacies but forget love. If you've learned something from these family stories, from these grandpa stories I've shared, then my mistakes weren't wasted. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If these grandpa stories resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share your own family stories in the comments below. Final note, this content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the core lessons about recognizing financial and emotional dynamics within families are real. If this style doesn't suit you, that's okay. Please seek content that better fits your needs.